Should we fire things up here?
Fire it off.
Alrighty, let me get my voice ready here. Alrighty, welcome back to another episode of Unscripted Exchanges. You guys are in for a treat this evening. We've got another great guest joining us. This is 2 in a row, Cole, right?
2 in a row.
How about that? I guess we're getting popular or something. So joining us tonight is Andy Ruther. He is, well, I'll do my best to try to introduce him. He is a marathon runner. He is a basketball coach. He's a comedian. He's a social media influencer, whether or not he wants to agree with that. He does a lot of things. He is continuing to make a difference in the sports world. He is the host of Dirty Sports. And he is just a jack of all trades, I guess is the right way of putting it. So welcome to the show, Andy.
Thanks. You're leading off with marathon runner.
I know.
Yeah.
That would be the last thing I would lead off with. I've barely run 3 marathons.
I feel like it's because Hayden just ran his second on Sunday. It's on top of his mind.
It's top of mind, and I think last time we connected, we were talking about running or something.
So how'd it go? Talk to me, Hayden.
I fell apart. I came out way too hot. I was crushing it. I think the first 6 miles or so, I was running right under a 7-minute pace, which is phenomenal. And
Sure.
then by the time I reached mile 10 or so in Hyde Park, this is the Cincinnati Pig, by the way, I was feeling gassed. And then the last 16 miles, it was kind of off and on, stop and start. And I finished right under 4 hours, which is pretty good.
That's good.
In the
It's real
grand
good.
scheme of things, but I was still shooting for like 3 hours and 15 minutes. So.
I feel like this is what happened in October, though.
Yeah, exactly.
You said you came out hot.
Same thing, deja vu. pretty much. It goes back to nutrition. Last fall, I had to go to the bathroom twice.
Yeah.
That's where I thought I lost a bunch of time. This time, no joke, I was craving food so bad throughout the race. Like, I went to the bathroom before, didn't eat, so that I went from one extreme to the other, where I had a full stomach to just an empty stomach, and I was craving, like, sweets, candy, Skyline. I wanted Skyline so bad.
So take me through your pre-run. The pre-race meal, what'd you have?
I feel like he's interviewing me right
I
now.
know, and I'm like, I'm looking
Roles
over.
reversed.
Yeah, we talked about this the other day, and he said that. I'm like, oh, that's exactly what happened. Yeah, go ahead. What'd you eat?
What did I eat before? So I carb loaded, like, they tell everyone to do. I think I had spaghetti the night before. I had some ravioli.
What'd you have in the morning, though?
Oh, like right up.
Yeah.
No, all I had was a scoop of peanut
That's
butter.
where he messed
like,
up.
Literally no food. And then I had the, what do you call those things?
Like the Gatorade gel packs or whatever?
Not those.
Those little gummies?
Goo, I think. GU. Those gel things.
So you do all this training.
Yeah, I fucked up.
Let's go through this, right? Like
Yep.
this is, and obviously, Cole, you probably have some insight because you guys have a show together. You see
Yeah.
each other, so right? He's training all the time, and then the morning of, he's like, "Yeah, I'm just gonna be like a college kid and have a slab of peanut butter before I run into class." But no, you're not running to class. You're doing 26 miles.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, he said that. He goes, and it's funny because every time we're talking or I come over to record or anything like that, we always, like, he works around my schedule because I've got 2 daughters and I've got stuff going on, and then we work around. He's like, I'm training. This is like one of my top priority. I'm like, I get that, dude. Like, I'm not going to run a marathon, but I can imagine how regimented you have to be if you want to do well. And so he's got like this eating program and this and that. And I get over here, he's like, he's working on his back porch. I'm like, how did you do? He's like, I didn't do as well as I wanted to. And he's like, I only had a scoop of peanut butter before I ran. I'm like, dude, that's something they teach you in like 8th grade, Hayden. Like, you got to eat some food.
So I was just worried that by eating too much again, I would have to go to the bathroom.
Sure.
Because sometimes, and I've done that on all of my long runs where I literally didn't eat that much or anything, and I would be fine. And even just having like a pack of oatmeal, like, it makes me want to go to the bathroom, so I didn't want to eat anything.
You didn't want to risk it, basically.
Exactly. So.
I bet it sounds like you kind of have. I went through some battles, but I think a lot of it's mental.
It probably is. Yeah.
But I mean, you were really coming out hot. That pace is.
Oh, I was crushing it. I mean, I had a very strict regimen. I screwed up again with my diet 24 hours before the race.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not easy. Be proud. Under 4 is great.
Yeah. But
Running 26 miles is great. Running a marathon is great. So I'm the positive. I'm
Yeah,
optimist.
So, like, what's the most you've ever run?
probably 5 or 6 miles.
Okay.
Like, yeah, I mean, I can go out and run 5 miles
Yeah.
at like a 10 and a half minute pace. I'm not a runner. I haven't trained for a marathon, never
Sure.
done it. So I mean, like a hike, like he's like under 4 hours. I'm going, I go to East Fork and I do like a 10-mile hike. It's called the Loop around the lake. I'm like, that takes me 4 hours to do the
Yeah.
hike. So, I'm sitting here going, you can be a little hard on yourself and this and that, but you still ran 26 miles.
I mean,
straight.
It's all relative. I mean, you've ran what? You said a couple of marathons in your heyday?
I've done 3 full, 2 halves.
Okay. And what was your best?
You did much better. So I did in 2019. I did a reckless thing. I did 2 marathons within 6 weeks, 2 fulls. I did LA's and then I did Cincinnati's.
Is LA hilly?
Cincinnati's much easier.
Yeah. Wow, yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
It's much easier. Mm-hmm. LA's is okay. I actually did Cincinnati's better. I probably did Cincinnati around like 4:37.
Okay, that's still pretty darn good.
Thanks. But I hit same thing. I was trying to go under 4
Right.
and I was doing great. And my problem what happened in LA, it's almost like similar to you, but with liquid. I felt like I was cramping. I felt like I was drinking too much during the race. Mm-hmm. So then in Cincinnati, I didn't. And I didn't drink enough
The
at all.
opposite effect.
So then at mile 13, like right at the halfway, I started dry heaving and then I ended up throwing up.
Right.
Because I was like dehydrated and from there the wheels fell off.
Yeah.
'Cause
And it sucks.
Because everybody who was following me goes, you were so on pace to do under 4.
Yeah.
And then that last half, I just ate it.
Yeah.
And you know how it goes. Once you fall off.
You fall
Well,
off
it's
quick.
like, I think the interesting thing is from a non-marathon runner is like if you fall off pace for like 2 or 3 miles, then you got to make that back up on top of being on a better pace. Like it's like you dig yourself in the hole if you get off pace a little bit. It sounds like.
I guess Siri's joining us for this
Siri, what do you
episode as
think?
well.
Yeah.
Isn't that creepy? Like, does that bother you guys?
What, Siri?
Just everything that, like, right now, everything we're doing is being watched.
Yeah.
I mean, yes and no. And what the hell? Why is it still going?
I got a story if you want one.
Sure.
Okay, so we got a Google Home. You know the Google Homes, right?
Yeah.
And this was probably 5 or 6 years ago when they first came out. We got one for the house, really excited. And you could talk to it and play music and
But
stuff.
by the way, not to cut you off real quick, when you first say Google Home, this is where my mind.
Let's hear it.
I go like crazy, wild conspiracy. I think like Google made your home.
Oh,
And they're watching your entire home.
Okay, it's not a Google made home.
Okay.
To your left, there is a Google Home, by the way, as well.
Yeah, it was like that. It's probably listening to us right now. We might want to unplug it. It'd sit on the counter, and we'd walk in, and my daughter would say stuff to it and this and that. And we'd talk, and one night we walk in the house, and we were talking about my mom got a new dog, like a new puppy. And we're like, hey, Google, like we didn't say, we hadn't ever like said anything, but we're like, hey, Google, what should we name our next puppy? Just like it's a joke. And it goes, I think you should name it Bobo. And Bobo was the...
Once again, Giggle's listening.
Yeah.
See what I'm saying?
That was almost
That
too good.
wigs me out for the record.
It said that.
I'm like, whoa!
It literally said that to us, and I look at it, man, and I'm like, well, we never had like, it had been listening to our conversations about the dog, and it like noted it and said, hey, you should use this name as a new dog's name. I'm like, unplug that, get that out of here.
So like I watch Black Mirror,
I've heard crazy things. I haven't
wild.
seen it. Yeah.
and so many episodes of Black Mirror are coming true.
Yeah.
Like it's creepy and scary, and like that type of stuff, the artificial intelligence. It's only a matter of time before we're taking over. You guys realize that, right?
You really think robots are going to take over?
100%.
We've
Haven't
talked
you
about
watched-
this before.
Haven't you watched Terminator?
Yeah.
100%. I
So
believe that.
how quickly do you think this is approaching us? Should we be...
Probably not our lifetime, but
Oh, then who cares, right?
yeah, I agree. Things are moving at such a quick pace.
Yeah.
I mean, here's what I always tell people.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm 40. The iPhone came out in 2007.
Yep.
That's really not that long ago. So I always joke with my buddies that we were the last great generation of college grads because we didn't have iPhones, so we could get away with a lot more.
Right. There wasn't a camera in your face 24/7.
Well, and social media wasn't really around. Like,
Exactly.
yeah, you can't just see everything. Everybody sees something on an Instagram reel or
So
something
like
like that.
I just escaped that. So look how much the world has changed since the iPhone and social media. Twitter came out in 2006, Instagram a couple years later. I think Facebook was 2004. My point is everything does change that quickly. And take someone like Elon Musk, who I like a lot and I think he's brilliant and I'm happy that he's buying Twitter, but he's so smart. He's the type of guy who's going to make the robots take over because he's going to create something.
I disagree with you on that. I think Elon knows that could happen. There are other people that are smart, so smart that they could have that happen. I think Elon doesn't want that to take place.
But the thing with the brain...
Bill Gates, I think, on the other hand, is someone that
Okay.
would maybe allow for something like that to go down.
Clearly you're team Elon and they have a beef. Elon wants to create a beef.
Yeah, I don't know why, but yeah, there's definitely some beef going on between those two.
But doesn't Elon Musk... Isn't he creating that device that's going to...
Hey, put it back your brain.
Yeah, that's going to... For people who've had brain injuries.
Neuralink?
Which
Yeah.
would be me.
Dude, it's-
People who've had traumatic brain injuries.
Uh-huh.
Like, am I going to turn into a
there's-
robot one day?
There's a movie with Tom Hardy that's like literally about that. Where you basically like you can have like a brain injury or like you're born without use of your limbs or something like that. And they take the thing, they plug it in the back of your head, and all of a sudden you can walk and you can move and stuff. Like that's kind of creepy, right?
I guess it depends on what your definition is, and like if it's going to help us progress as a civilization, then
Well, I think
so be it. But I get what you're saying. You're fearful that like robots or technologies will take over human beings.
Oh, okay,
but I don't think
yeah.
that's going to happen.
Well, I disagree. Take driverless cars.
Yeah.
Now, it was progressing at a very quick rate, and I think there was that bad accident where somebody died. I don't know if you know this, a few years ago in Arizona, I believe.
Okay.
Which I think
It was like a truck driver, right? It was like a autonomous semi truck.
I'm talking about something that I think was testing for maybe Uber or Lyft. I could be wrong.
Right.
Sure, go ahead.
But regardless, right? That still kind of terrifies me. And the reality is, we're definitely within 10 years of you getting picked up in your Uber or Lyft, and there's no one in the car.
Less than 3 years.
Okay, exactly.
Yeah. Right.
Does that terrify you guys at all?
No.
No. Why would it? Like why? So like what is terrifying about that? I mean, to me, it's like it's one or the other, right? You've got a bunch of idiot drivers on the road driving around, or you've got a machine. Now, there's the pros and the cons.
So they lock that car and they take you straight into a cargo ship that's going to be shipped from Long Beach
or
out to Europe, and you're stuck.
but you
I'm
got
just saying.
you got the Craigslist killer that's putting people in his trunk. I mean, so yeah, you go one or the other.
You bring up good points, but like the same logic, do you like flying? And maybe you hate flying.
Well, I have anxiety flying, and they say it's because I'm a control. This is probably what it boils down to. To put on my own shrink hat, I have control issues.
Yeah, I'm the same way.
So that's why they say people who have control issues have anxiety flying. It's not the fear of death, even when there's turbulence. It's like control.
True.
So that's probably the same issue with the
this.
driverless cars.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you like to drive? Like when you go places, do you like to
yeah.
be the driver?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. I get the plane thing too, right? Like the plane thing makes sense, especially if you want control, you're flying with somebody else.
So like when I moved back from Los Angeles to Cincinnati a year and a half ago, I was with my oldest brother. I drove the entire way.
That's a hike.
What is that, over 3,000 miles or something?
Yeah, it's
Well,
It's gotta be.
Let me educate you guys a little on this. I don't think coast to coast it's 3,000 miles, but it's like 2,100 miles or something.
Yeah.
yeah, but if you like, but the way you have to take highways and stuff, it makes it longer, right? Because
Yeah.
it's not a straight line. You can't take one
I've
highway.
done the cross country drive a lot, actually. I've done it like 6 or 7 times, which I recommend everyone to do. This country is so beautiful. It's so diverse geographically. There's so many different types of cool cities, people. Like when you go across the United States, it's like you're going to different countries at times. I always say.
Yeah.
Well, it's like that. I had that conversation with my wife the other day. We were talking about like we've been to all these different countries, and I'm like, we always think about going to like the Bahamas or going to Hawaii or going to Europe, and it's like, how many times have we been out west? Like, we haven't ever gone out to Montana together. Like, we've never been to Yellowstone, Glacier National Park, Mount Zion National Park. Like you said, those are like
Gorgeous.
unbelievable
Gorgeous.
Places that it's almost like we forget that they're there.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, I'm like, we got to start like traveling within like the country we live in, because there's a lot of cool stuff we haven't seen.
And there's a lot of like shithole cities that are also.
You're like, avoid.
No, those are some of the best pockets in America.
What was your coolest place you guys stopped at on that trip then?
That one wasn't. That was more of just getting back.
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to think of some of the random spots I've stopped at though throughout my life. Well, here's one. We spent a weekend with my podcast. We worked with a AA baseball team in Amarillo, Texas.
Okay.
So Texas, obviously massive state.
Yeah.
You know the top that's like a giant rectangle? You know that part?
Yeah.
That's where Amarillo is.
Okay.
Near nothing. You wouldn't think anything of it. We were there for what, 2 or 3 nights, doing some events with the team and with this restaurant called the Big Texan. Loved it. Again, a pocket you wouldn't think of. Amarillo, Texas. Small town. When I say small town, there's still probably 80, 100,000 people there. I could be way off, but you know, it's a fair amount. But there are so many of those towns
Scattered throughout the U.S.
Yeah, I mean, this is a big country. People don't realize
It's the
how big
greatest country, but hey.
Do you think it's by far the greatest country?
Yeah, in certain facets. I'll be careful with how I answer that. Yeah.
You have to be careful. It's
Well,
a podcast. Say
it's our podcast, and I want to
Sure.
be careful with what.
I gotcha. I'm trying to get you to say some wild
Yeah.
shit.
No, I knew. You're
So
poking
Andy
the,
and I are very similar in terms of we like to stir the pot.
he's poking the bear a little bit.
I was asking him, and I won't get into the specifics, but I'm like, is there anything that you want to stay away from today? He's like, no, I'm an open book. And then we were exchanging some more text messages, and I sent him something. He's like, no, I don't want to talk about that. I'm like, see, I knew there was something there.
I murdered somebody.
Yeah. Leave a comment and let us know what do you think Andy is trying to not share.
I'm kind of curious.
You'll never guess.
You know what I want to ask you about, Andy, that I almost did before we jumped on here, and then you guys both cut me off, said save it for the show. Your podcast. Like, tell me about what you guys. I mean, it's called Dirty Sports, right?
Correct.
And just tell me a little bit about it. Tell me how you got started. Like, why did you start? And then like just kind of get into it, because I don't know, and I'm fresh here, so I want to hear all about it.
Before you go into that, I love how you open up your podcast. Can you just do a quick like welcome to? I love how you introduce.
Oh, my intro?
Yeah, I think it's perfect.
Welcome to the Dirty Sports Podcast. This is your host, Andy Ruther. I say I'm your host. See, I messed it up already. I'm not in the zone.
I love it, man.
And I just introduced where I'm from, and then my co-host, where he's at, which now we're in different cities. But I always wanted to host a sports podcast. So I shouldn't say always. Let me just take you guys back. Let's bore everybody by taking us way back.
No, I want to hear it. Yeah,
So
give me the whole.
when I was a kid, I always wanted to be on Sports Center.
Okay.
Like that. I'm older. Like that was. I know the heydays of Sports Center, right? Not in
The glory days, right?
the
good days.
It
yeah.
is like
Yeah.
the glory days. Now you don't need Sports Center.
No.
You have Twitter and Instagram and highlights. YouTube. You don't need it. So, but back then you had to watch Sports Center for your highlights, and there was great commentary. The best duo all time was Dan Patrick and Keith Olbermann. They worked great together, and I always wanted to be on Sports Center. And then as I got older, I started getting more interested in comedy and blah, blah, blah. I started doing stand-up comedy. I moved to LA basically a couple years after college. And when I started the podcast is crazy now how many there are out there, as you guys know. It's a tough market.
So I think podcasting is like the new Twitter. Like everyone has a Twitter now.
Sure.
And like everyone has an opinion. So it's like like you said, it's
100%.
become so oversaturated.
100%. So we started, I wanted to start a podcast in like 2013.
Okay.
So at the time, there weren't many, this is going to sound crazy to even say this, sports podcasts.
Well, but I mean, because it's progressed, it's got so popular, right?
So like now, every person out on ESPN or Fox Sports or you name it has a sports podcast. Back then, it was Barstool, and Barstool wasn't even that big. in like 2013.
Right.
It was Barstool had their podcasts. As far as sports, there was a couple LA comics I knew. So I wanted to start a sports comedy podcast. And I asked my buddy Joe Prano, who I'd met performing at the Comedy Store. We met in the green room during a show. We became friends. And I asked him, and we started, discussing the idea of doing it. And then 6 months later, or 8 months later, I don't remember, we started doing the show. And it was, the first episode was after the infamous, I don't know if you guys remember this, Richard Sherman interview with Aaron Andrews, which was the NFC Championship game.
Yeah.
So it's San Francisco against Seattle.
Yep.
I remember this.
And they drive to the very end. San Francisco's driving. This one, Kaepernick's still their quarterback. They're driving, and they were big rivals, right? And they're playing in the NFC Championship. And Kaepernick throws it, and Sherman intercepts it in the end zone. And then the Seahawks are going to the Super Bowl. And that's when we started it.
Okay.
Was that right after that NFC AFC Championship weekend was our first episode.
Wasn't that when Richard Sherman was like yelling? Like,
yes.
Yeah, like he was like just like yelling. I can't remember what he was saying.
And I loved him. I literally bought a Sherman jersey that night.
That was so hyped.
This guy is crazy. I love this guy. And that's the show started there, and we were doing it in my we were recording in my apartment in Venice Beach, where Joe and I both lived in Venice Beach, California at the time, and that's kind of how it all got started.
How did you market the podcast? Like, how did people start to, buy into what you guys had to talk about?
So at the time, I had built up some big like Twitter feeds that I could retweet the show on.
Yeah.
And basically, when you start anything, you just want to start getting a small audience.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, right.
Right. And then grow it from there.
Yep.
And hope that they like your content. And like I said, at the time, we were fortunate that the competition wasn't nearly as heavy as it is now. I think about that. Like, I think how hard it would be to start a sports podcast right now in this market. So we were fortunate in that regard. And then it started to grow, and then you see the growth. When I realized, and you asked me this before the show.
Yeah.
When I finally had that kind of aha moment, like we have a following, was probably about 14, 15 months later. Joe, who's a diehard Mets fan, tweeted that he wanted to throw an opening pitch before a Mets game.
Okay.
And he tweets this out, and he uses the hashtag. His last name is Prano, Praino. Let Prano pitch. And enough of our listeners retweeted that, and the Mets were tagged in it.
Okay.
Or liked it. There's just a lot of engagement.
Yeah.
That within 3 days of that tweet, and again, this would be really hard now with the amount of engagement that tweets get. Within 3 days, the Mets social media director, or whoever was running their Twitter, direct messaged Dirty Sports and said, let's talk and start setting up a date where you guys can come in.
That's amazing.
That was when you were like, okay, like this is really,
this is real. And then when it became even more real was we flew from LA to New York, and we set it up perfectly. He picked a night the Mets were playing the Reds, so both of our teams, and the Mets were cool, and they said, we'll give really cheap seats out in the outfield, like 250 seats at a really low price for friends, family, listeners. And that was the moment too. We do the pitch. He throws the ceremonial pitch to me, and
so dope.
There was listeners who had like signs for us, and then they want to take pictures and do all that thing. And there was this guy. He was a big guy. He kept taking off his shirt and saying, "Sign my tits."
Did you do it?
Of course,
of course you did.
So like that day was like a huge moment, and I'll be honest, like I'm an emotional person. I came back to my hotel and I actually cried because I was like, it was like so much emotion for me, and my family wasn't. My mom and dad and my brother Greg and my sister-in-law Kelly were there, and it was like I had worked my ass off so hard. That was an emotional night for me because it was just like all this work, and I was just overcome.
Absolutely. Well, it's like you put in a bunch of effort, right?
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, it's going to come eventually. Eventually, and you're telling yourself, that this is worth it. Eventually, eventually it'll turn it'll turn into something. Eventually, it will.
Yeah.
You get the belief system, right? And then it's different when it actually like something actually does happen like that, where it's like, okay, like I've really hit this point where it's everybody's seeing the success this is garnering.
And for me, it wasn't even because at the time the truth is we weren't really making any money on the show. But I think for me, it was also maybe some validation with my parents being there and having family to see, wow, Andy's been doing this podcast, which they don't really fully understand. And now they see, wait, kids are holding signs up for my son and they want to take pictures and,
there's something here.
There's this wild fanfare and our listeners are called Dirt Balls, and all the Dirt Balls are there, and it was such a beautiful night. And to add to the pitch, so when they do ceremonial pitches, they have a bunch of people do. I don't know if you guys realize this. Like we were like the opening act because
next,
the guys who threw right after us were Porzingis because he'd just been drafted to I forget, one of the Grant brothers. So it was like, let's do these guys first, and then they announce you and they bring you up, and then they had Porzingis throw out the first pitch. But it was just a great night, and that was June. Let's see here, I'm pretty good at dates. It was like June 26th or 27th, around there. 2015 is when that happened.
Wow.
That sounds like I could see like the emotion on your face, like that feeling. Like you still probably, you can still remember it like that. Like
I do.
Yeah, because it just sounds like so amazing.
It's a life milestone.
Yeah, like you've just like, I think I like the story you kind of said, like your parents there, like your family and support, and then being able to see like, okay, this isn't just something that like he's just been doing to have, but we kind of don't understand it. But we see that it's something he's been so passionate about, and this is where he's come. That's just neat. That's so rewarding.
So back then, were you still doing like stand-up comedy too? Because like, how were you earning a living?
I was. So good question. So at the time, I was working on a radio show for SiriusXM. I was working for Lance Bass from NSYNC fame. He had a radio show on SiriusXM 5 days a week, and I was his writer. We were live 2 hours a day, 5 days a week. I was his writer, but I also got to be on air every day. And that's how I made my living. But I also had side gigs through social media.
Sure.
People would pay me to promote stuff in that sphere. But that year and that time that I was with Lance, a year and a half or whatever, I basically had no life because I would do Dirty Sports twice a week. And his show was called Dirty Pop. And he also had a second countdown show on SiriusXM that I wrote. So I was working nonstop. And the irony was, one show is called Dirty Pop and one show is called Dirty Sports. And they couldn't be more different. Like Dirty Pop, pop culture show, me and two gay guys discussing pop culture. And, it's very like that type of world. And then Dirty Sports is like two bros talking sports. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But I loved both. And that was that. I look back on that was a great time in my life, to be honest.
Did you just to follow up on that? Did you start podcasting because you thought you were going to make a career out of it, or did you do it kind of like this would be awesome if it blew up, but I also am passionate about it, and so I'm gonna put my all into it and see if it pans out? Like, what was that thought process behind that?
No, it's a good question. I didn't really think about blowing up or the financial end. I just thought, I love sports. I love talking sports. I've been a sports dork, a sports nerd, call it what you want. I'm that guy my whole life. So why not do that and passionately talk about it with someone else, with athletes, with writers, with anybody who likes to talk sports? And that's basically why I started. And I still feel the same way.
So it definitely sounds like you were just super passionate and you knew that, okay, if I'm so passionate about this, the money's probably going to come along sooner or later.
Yeah, well, and also, I've lived I've lived an interesting life, and, our show is sports, but we go off on tangents. We might not
like any show, though, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
We might not talk sports. We might just go off on a tangent for God knows how long, especially during what we call the lull periods of the sports
Right.
season.
No sports, yeah.
Right. So that was my thing is I've been a talker my whole life, going back to grade school. And then I get into stand-up comedy, and then I'm in radio and all those things. I wanted to make a living off being able to talk.
Yeah, that'd be like you're like that would be ideal. Like I'm already good at this. Let me just polish it.
Yeah, and exactly. And you learn. I cringe listening back to some of my episodes.
But I think that's a good thing. That shows how much you've grown though
Sure.
too, right? Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah.
It's the same way with stand-up. I don't like watching any of that old stuff. And most comedians or most performers don't, because I'll get very nitpicky.
Sure.
You know, in all regards. I'll say I used to listen back on my podcast just to nitpick, which I think is good.
To a degree, right?
Sure, but now I don't. Now I'm like, oh God, I said too much, or I said like too much. Those things.
We're our own biggest critic, right? Like we're gonna be.
You should be, I think.
Yeah, we are. Like we're our own biggest critic.
But
So
some
like,
people aren't.
Yeah, that's being self-aware, but there are people that are too critical, and
Sure.
I think I land on the side of being too critical. I tell Cole this all the time, and I think he knows after a few months of working together that I can be a little too critical, and it's like just relax, like just let it go, and
Yeah,
it will work itself
Give me an
out.
example.
Well, going back to just podcast episodes, I said this, and I don't know if I really align with that, or I said too many times, or I say the word that phrase all the time in between transitions, like little things like that where I just nitpick myself, and goes like, just don't sweat it, like who cares, the content's still there at the end of the day. Or sometimes I might not be fully engaged in some of our conversations, and he can recognize that very well, and it's just like, okay, why don't you pick some of the topics that you're engaged on, and then we'll have a better episode then if you're worried about stuff like that.
So what's your guys' background?
do you know how we met? So we went to grade school together.
Okay. So
Yeah,
you went to Guardian Angels?
Went to Guardian Angels. Yeah, we were
You're also an
the
angel
Angels
over there, right?
represent-
Did you go to GA too?
I did.
Let's go.
Class
Let's go.
of 96.
Oh man, we were. I don't know what class we were in.
2008.
2008. No, we went to GA together. We were like in the same friend group, and then he went off to St. X, and I went off to Turpin, like high school. And just kind of how it happens. You go to different schools, you have different groups, and we kind of stayed in touch. We'd see each other at parties and stuff. And then, fast forward to like over the summertime, I saw something. He posted something. We kind of caught up a little bit, and he posted something on LinkedIn. I'm like, hey man, how you doing? We went out, like met at a bar. I got a few beers because he didn't drink. He doesn't drink. So I'm like, I drank the beer for us. And we went and sat down, and I'm like, okay, cool. Like, let's catch up again. And then back in December, we sat down for coffee at Panera. We were just bullshitting, like going back and forth. How you doing?
Yeah.
And I had run my own startup a few years ago, and we were in aquaculture, and I'd run it for about 3.5 years and shut it down about two years ago. So this was about 5 years ago. And so I was like having that itch, right? That entrepreneurial itch to get into something, right? To get into something that's not just my day job routine, right? I want something that is for me, that I'm putting that sweat and effort into. That's my own, right? And so didn't really know what that was though. So we were talking about that, and he mentioned like I'm in the same boat. I want something, and we started talking about podcasting, and we're like, dude, let's do it. Let's start a podcast. And so a week later, we started Unscripted Exchanges, came up with the name, started doing it. But I mean, I come from like a sales background, so I've done sales. I'm a talker. I mean, I can talk and pretty much engage with most people. So I came from that background of, I had my daughter when I was 19, at a very young age, and I got right into sales. So I was in college, started working in sales, and then I've just climbed my way up, started my own business, done a lot of stuff, and this, when you said like, I wish I wanted to make a living talking, like that, like hits home for me because I enjoy like sharing my opinion, engaging with people, talking, like hearing your story, like seeing the passion, the excitement, the energy you've got about what you do. Like that invigorates me. That gets me like excited, right? That gets me moving. So again, that my background's kind of been, more sales, You know, I got 2 daughters. I got, you know, a beautiful wife and, you know, entrepreneurship, you know, and I just, something like this, an opportunity to have people listen to me and pull something out of, that sounds awesome.
So are you local in Anderson as well?
I live in Amelia now.
Okay.
Yeah, but I grew up in Anderson. Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah, so we're right down the street.
Isn't Amelia officially not a thing?
No, it's okay. So it's
What happened with
It is
Amelia?
a- okay,
Explain
so-
this to me. I don't
This
really
is
understand
news to
this.
me because I don't know.
no. So it's like you're actually right.
It's like technically not a city. Or
So
something.
it's I really don't know. Like our address is Amelia. So we bought a house in the neighborhood over there, I think July, and I don't know either. Like to be real honest,
You know what I'm referring to,
No,
right,
I literally
though?
because I know exactly what you're saying. Amelia was like, I think absorbed by Batavia, like the village of Batavia, but my address is still Amelia.
That's why I'm confused because I still see Amelia, but I was told a couple years ago
There's no like Amelia taxes or anything like that.
Yes.
Yeah. I have no idea.
So it's like a takeover. How the hell's that happen?
no, literally. I think everybody was just like
AI took over Amelia.
think
This is
literally-
what's going on.
I think I don't know how to answer that because we live in Amelia, but it's not a thing. But our address is Amelia. I have no. I couldn't tell you.
Just tell people you don't know where you live. It's
Like
a
I pay.
true
I pay.
statement.
Like yeah. I don't know because like I thought the same thing, and I'm like, they absolved the city of Amelia, like kind of like dissolved it, and
Correct.
it was absorbed by Batavia, and then whatever's past Batavia, I think it's not Brown County. There's Brown County's out there, but if you go all the way down like 125, you get to I don't know what it's called, but anyways, it's like to answer your question, I don't know if
No one knows.
no, but I live in Amelia. Just
Yeah.
I live like in somewhere else, you know, off the grid, basically.
Enough about us over here. I feel like he's interviewing us. He's good at flipping the script.
Hey, man.
Well, he's learning about it as we're talking.
I
you
know.
know, I mean,
I know. I want to go back to some more of your podcasting stuff. I've seen that you've had a lot of big guests on your show, or at least in my eyes. Who would you say are some of your favorites? Or if you have a favorite, who would it be?
Guest-wise, well, we alluded to it before the show. We had Pat McAfee on,
so dope.
who is a great guy. He's obviously killing the game.
Like he's in podcasting now, right?
Oh,
He's got his
yeah.
own show.
Yeah.
Dude, the Pat McAfee show.
Yeah, yeah. But
It's
he
hilarious.
started
So
that
good.
only 3 or 4 years ago.
No, he's been.
He's been doing it for a while.
I mean, maybe,
He did
maybe-
it after you started your show, though, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Pat just signed a deal with FanDuel, I believe, the end of 2021 for $30 million a year. Pat's huge, massive.
Yeah.
He's got a great show, and he's in Indianapolis, and he's got a whole crew around him, and his model is a great model. What I love about this is that you don't need to be in the big city.
No, hell no.
You can be anywhere, and the truth is that was one of my things moving back was internally, is this the I gave up? Because we kind of look down on people like that.
Yeah.
When I say we, I think people that were in the entertainment world,
Totally.
and I was one of them, where that was the give up card the minute you left LA. But with YouTube and technology now,
It doesn't matter.
if you're interesting, if you're entertaining, if you're smart, clever, funny, whatever it is, it doesn't, you can be in Des Moines, Iowa, you can be in Los Angeles, you can be in New York, you can be in Amarillo, Texas. It doesn't matter.
Amen to that.
And,
So
I think that's what makes it great.
Pat is your all-time favorite then?
Well, I mean, favorite's tough. We've had a lot of people. We've had Sean Merriman on a lot, who we haven't had him on for a minute, but he was a 3-time Pro Bowler, Defensive Rookie of the Year, played for the Chargers.
Dude, he was a monster.
And Sean would always laugh because he would come and he would sit in my apartment on a couch like that in between us and, like you're saying, monster. And he'd just be like, this is what we're doing it now. Because when he started, we would be in the studio and then he would come in. But we've also had people, and this is awful that I can't remember certain guests that we've had. We've had guests that aren't the biggest names that are just fun for me to talk to.
Yeah.
So like, I was fanboying out big time when we had David Zucker on.
See there. We,
Siri and Google after us again.
That's on me now. That's on my watch.
shut her down.
Creepy. But David Zucker, who was one of the writers and directors of the Airplane and Naked Gun movies.
Yeah.
So I got it. One of the reasons I got into comedy was those movies. Those movies were hits when I was like 9, 10 years old, 11 years old. So to go to his house in Brentwood and interview him, like that was great. Or other, again, names who aren't the biggest but kind of have a cult following. We had Brian Scalabrine, the White Mamba, on our show.
Hell yeah.
And that was great because Scal gave us, between on air and off air, we talked to him for like 3.5 hours. And these were just interesting, nerd, in-depth sports discussions that were going so far down that he's listening to us and we're listening back. And he played, I think, 10 years in the NBA. And it's just fascinating hearing why Joe and I are saying why LeBron is, our opinion, the best of all time over Jordan. And he's coming back at us, but then he's also listening to some of our points, which is kind of cool from a guy who played with these people.
Yeah.
And now he's hearing, he's like, oh, that's actually a good point.
He's not just writing you off as like, oh, you didn't play, so you don't know.
Yeah.
He's like, legitimately, you have a good point. You know, he's engaging in the discussion versus just shutting you down.
Yeah, exactly. So that's kind of been fun for me, just to have conversations like that with people, with athletes, with anybody, to be honest.
That's so awesome.
I'm curious. So when you go into like when you have guests on, right? Do you typically discuss like, hey, here's maybe what we're going to talk about beforehand so they're prepared? Do you just invite them in? I mean, maybe you do it different now than you used to do it, but like you're a guest that's podcast, right? I mean, you do this for a living.
Sure.
So you're very easy to go back and forth with, like, and talk with.
Yeah.
Right? But we have guests on, like we've had some amazing guests already that have awesome stories, and we think they've been great. But I think, I guess I'll just do it on air, is like, what is, we try to have genuine, unscripted exchanges. That's our brand. That's what we're doing. But preparing for those, how did you make guests more comfortable? Did you have those conversations beforehand? Do you do it differently now than before?
Well, normally we'll just get into it. I'm pretty prepared. I always do my research. When I worked in radio, we had guests on all the time. Mm-hmm. And one of my jobs as the writer was I would write the questions for the host, who was Lance Bass. So let's say, for example, and we had great names on his show. So, for example, like we had Kevin Hart on his show. So my job would be, as the writer, what's Kevin doing right now? Mm-hmm. Prepare the questions, research it. That's helped me along the way for everything I've done with Dirty Sports, because I had to do that for like 5 days a week.
Regimented. You had to get it like you.
And I'm writing for somebody else, right? So, for example, last week we had on Dirty Sports Jeff Pearlman, who's the writer of Showtime, which is the 80s dynasty of the Lakers, which is now a hit show on HBO. Mm-hmm. So for Jeff, I read his book, which is a 450-page book. Great book. I recommend it for everybody who's interested in that era or just the history of that Lakers dynasty or even the NBA. And I probably prepared 20 questions.
Okay.
But even those ebb and flow naturally into the conversation. Mm-hmm. I had those ready if I needed them, but I knew it was going to be easy because he's a sports writer. I'm a sports guy. My co-host is a sports guy. And that 50 plus minutes that we had him on the show, it goes like that.
Right, right.
Yeah.
Flies by.
Yeah.
Because we're discussing his book, we're discussing the TV show, which obviously all of us watch as well. And it's an easy transition from question to question. But I always tell people, be prepared, but also to answer your question, because I haven't really answered your question. He was a prime example. Is there anything you don't want us to ask you or anything?
Okay.
That's more for kind of like what Hayden did with me yesterday. Is there anything you don't want to talk about?
Which I'm still trying to figure out what that is.
You'll never know.
It's nothing major, by the way.
Oh, it's huge.
Well, now you can't
huge
say that.
News.
Because I'm sitting here and I'm like, I got to pay attention to what we're talking about instead of trying to analyze like what it was.
Maybe he'll share with you off air.
Yeah, will ya?
Maybe.
Sure.
No, you're probably gonna hold it back now. He's gonna be like, yeah,
you don't want to know.
I just met you. Like, I won't tell you. No, I appreciate that. I mean, again, it's like, for us, I've got the opportunity to sit here and talk to you. What did you?
Like, what's your guys' end game here?
what's our end game? I mean, I think
Did you discuss this?
I
Yes.
think we both have similar visions, but I think we would probably answer the question a little bit differently. And I love the question that you just asked Andy, by the way, though, in terms of we do a lot of research ourselves. At least I think we do, Cole. We have questions prepared like that we write ahead of in advance, but I think to take that a step further, do we share that with who we're bringing onto the show, or do we kind of just keep that between ourselves? I think that's the balance that we've been kind of struggling with. And I think it's situational depending on who the guest is, because there's some people that are more outgoing and it's going to be a lot easier to have that conversation and keep them engaged, versus there are some people where you probably want to give them a little bit of a heads up so they know what to expect. So
yeah.
yeah.
But like, as far as with this show, you guys both have day jobs.
Mm-hmm.
Is your life, like, is your goal to be doing this full time?
the goal. No, so the goal, yeah, it would be to do this. I'd say for me, at least from what we've discussed, and I think Hayden underestimates how much we align on this. But the goal is obviously just to create a lot of value, right, and grow this and be able to monetize this eventually, right? But it's doing so.
We
in a
have
way.
monetized it, by the way.
Yeah, but the goal is, yeah, to be doing this.
He sounded very confident. He's like, yeah.
I mean,
You can see we're totally on the same page, right?
Yeah.
No, I think the end goal of this is to create more opportunities for us to do this and start other companies or ventures that sprout out of this. I mean, the point of Unscripted Exchanges, at least for me, is to share value regarding, like, life experiences, like, beliefs, mantras, motivation, make somebody's day a little bit better and share something they can use. I believe, like, if you go into any conversation, we could talk for 2 or 3 hours. If I can take something away from that, like, that's positive, that will help me out, that's valuable, right?
Yeah.
So, on the higher stem of this is, okay, impacting other people, right? That's the first goal. Making, creating value for others, impacting them, having them say, hey, we've gotten something out of you guys. And then the business side of it is, yeah, we want to monetize it. We want to be able to do this, I would say full time, but also be able to, network and use this opportunity to meet with people, to maybe go into another business venture, whether it's a software company or a products company or a health company, whatever it is. I think there's, not one finite line where we want to go with this right now. If from my point of view, I think there's a lot of branches that can go out. But at the end of the day is we want to get people to follow and listen to us that believe in what we're saying and get something out of it.
What Cole said. Yeah, I mean, this is a launching pad, I think, to other opportunities. Like, yes, this would be one thing that we'd want to continue doing, but there's going to be other things that come about. Like, we're trying to create a marketing and media company, and that's one of many companies. And then there could be software companies and so on and so forth. And we're going to have startups involved. We're going to have venture capitalists. Like, this is just...
Oh, you want that VC money?
We're just the big...
That big money,
that
right?
VC money, yeah.
I mean, I'm talking a big game to some extent. But
yeah,
we're not going to rule anything out.
It was an opportunity for us to share value, talk to people, meet new people, and again, like, kind of get back into that entrepreneurial spirit where we can go in a lot of different routes.
So who are your... If I said...
Demographic.
Well, no, not even that. If I said, who are the people you look up to in those areas? Like entrepreneurial or motivators. I know Hayden and I have talked about David Goggins. Mm-hmm. I love Goggins because he's a lunatic. And that's just an example for somebody like me. If I maybe need a little motivation, I'll watch a video of him just screaming profanities at people and calling everybody a bitch. Like I love that dude. Read his book,
right.
Lunatic, absolute lunatic. I love hearing him on Joe Rogan, lunatic. Who were people like that maybe you guys look up to or want to maybe model after?
I'll start. So
Go for it.
Lewis Hose, he's got a podcast and he talks about just life-changing stuff. and very wide casting in terms of personalities that he has on. But again, it goes back to just trying to drive value out to the masses and make people live better lives. You don't always have to agree with what you hear. And that's the great thing about podcasting is, okay, I see the title of this. Sometimes the title can be, clickbait, but some people are a little bit better at putting details in their description, and you can kind of synthesize, okay, maybe this isn't for me. I'll skip this one. But again, that's the great thing about podcasting. So he's one of those guys. I mean, Joe Rogan comes to mind as well.
Sure.
Love him or hate him. I like Logan Paul as well. He's a young guy that's been crushing and having very big names on his show. So those are just some people to kind of compare. But we're trying to do our own unique thing as well. So those would be just the 2 or 3 names that come to mind immediately. What about you, Cole?
To be honest, my honest answer, I don't really necessarily look to anybody else for motivation for that or who's the epitome. I like different people. I like different things I hear. But I don't look to one individual or one, business person. I've met a lot of cool, interesting people that have been successful in business. Like, I raised angel funding for my startup, and I had some amazing
Okay, I'm an idiot. Break that down for someone like me who doesn't know. When you say
angel funding, so you've got the traditional funding, which is different. Like, you go back 20 or 25 years ago, you could go to a bank with a business plan. They give you money, right? That was how it was. Like, it was a handshake and here, like, this is it. And the reason VC and angel funding has become so much more prominent is that you can't just go to a bank and just get a business loan. It just doesn't work that way. So when you have a startup or an idea and you want to raise capital so you can get some milestones, right? Whether it's proof of concept or it's MVP or whatever it is, there's what's called angel investors, which are typically smaller investors, so smaller monetary amounts. It's not traditional like venture capital, so it's not coming from a fund. It's coming from an individual. So you go to individual A who's got a net worth of $10 million, and individual A, John, let's say, will give you $50,000 for 5%, right? That's different than a VC fund. That's a group of investors that vote all together.
Okay.
Yeah, so venture capital is typically like institutional money, versus angel investors are personal net worths.
Gotcha.
So they're investing their own cash versus working with a group of banks. Like a lot of the times VCs are backed by a big bank, like JP Morgan Chase or something like that. They're included in that.
Would you also say that VCs, at the end of the day, succeed or fail, you still have to pay back whatever they've
not necessarily.
It just depends on the terms.
Yeah, it's still not
okay.
A bank. It's still a capital. It's all so you go to a bank and typically you go to get a bank loan. You're not going to go to the bank and say, "Hey, I'll give you 20% if you give me $5 million or $500,000." That doesn't go that way. But a VC fund is set up so look at it like it's an investment fund. So look at it like you go to a hedge fund and say, "Hey, I want to put my money in your portfolio," and they go invest your money and make you 20% or whatever it is. It's the same principle. VCs have money and they go and they collect all this money together. They put it in this fund and they say, "Okay, we're going to grow this, so we're going to invest in." Let's say we're a early seed VC, right? Like a seed or early stage VC. We're going to invest in companies that are 5 employees with an idea that have potential to grow to $1 billion. We're going to, or they could fail. We'll give them $5 million and see how they do. There's a lot that goes into it. I learned a lot of that stuff when I started my company because that's what we had to do. We had to raise money. And we put a lot of our own capital into it, but at the end of the day, we needed a lot.
Let me ask you this.
Yeah.
Because I always joke. So I lived in California for 14 years.
Mm-hmm.
And people love tossing around the VC money term.
Oh, yeah.
And you see it all the time in these startups, and you see it with the new thing. Now I lived in Venice Beach, which for a while was called Silicon Beach because Snapchat started right down the street from
right.
me. And I think Tinder might have started there. Yeah. A lot. Google's LA office was half a mile down the street from me. Mm-hmm. Obviously, the main corporate is up in the San Francisco area. But my point is, you'd hear this, and I'd always be like, wait a second. is this all I got to do is create a good idea and they're just going to throw millions of dollars at me? Like, I almost feel like that's how it is.
No, I think, I think like that's what, it's just like anything with media, right? Like,
Yeah.
they only show you the stories of people that have like raised money. They never
Sure.
show you the stories of all the people that can't.
Yeah.
You only see like, here's these startups and here's how they raised a Series B for $55 million or this or that. But what they're not showing you is like, it is one of the hardest things you'll do. First of all, less than 1% of startups raise any capital at all. Angel capital, venture capital, less than 1%.
Less than 1%.
Less than 1%. You can fact check me on that. And I'm sure it's skewed because it's a Google thing you can look up, and Fortune's going to have a different idea than Forbes does, and this and that. But typically, like, to raise capital, you don't go into a company saying, you don't start a business going, I'm going to go, the only way I'm going to start this is if I can raise capital. You say, I'm going to work as much as I can and get as far as I can till I have literally no option but to raise money. And that's when for me, that's what we did. Like, we didn't just go out and start trying to raise money. We went as far as we could on our dime until we could not afford to take the next step on our own. Like, we put all our money into it. And even then, I mean, I got really lucky. I met some investors, I met some mentors that bought into me and were kind of like on the idea, but they really bought into me and believed in me and my team, and they said this could go somewhere. And they
That's
provided
usually how it goes, though, right?
Yeah,
they buy into the personality.
But I can tell you, like, all the people that said no or blew me off or met with me for 6 months, that's typically how it goes. You don't, raising capital is not a.
Do you have their names written on like a dry erase board?
Oh, I know. Like, we had one of them on our show already. Leo,
Who said no?
No, he said yes.
Oh,
yeah.
I was saying
he was
the people,
asking about the people that said
Oh
no
yeah,
to you
I
as
know. I could name
motivation.
them. I'm not going to.
and you're like, God, what am I forgetting his name?
Told them they were idiots.
From
I thought they were all morons.
I'm thinking of the character in Billy Madison who has the name crossed off with people he's gonna murder.
Holy shit! Yeah. Then when he like calls him he's like on the phone with him. He's apologized to
Why
him.
am I forgetting
I know
the
you're
I'm
actor?
terrible with movie quotes. And
I know
stuff.
you're talking about.
Let me ask you this, Andy.
Okay.
Have you ever been approached with VCs saying like, "Hey, we'll buy Dirty Sports, or we want you guys to do so and so with it"? Like, would you ever turn that into something bigger than it already is?
Well, the thing about that's an interesting question about buying, because I've had this discussion with my co-host. If somebody bought and then they want a percentage, then you're giving up control,
Yeah, right.
which is how it works for any business, of course.
Yeah.
But I would argue with something like podcasting, that's the best thing you have. Joe Rogan always says that. Is the control, is the power. Because once you get other money or other people involved, then suddenly you can't say certain
You
things.
gotta please, yeah.
Then suddenly,
He's cutting
and
the
I mean,
checks.
in full disclosure, there are certain things I can't say definitely around advertisements of companies that I work with. They don't really, they never censor what we say on the show, but centered around the ad,
Yeah.
there are certain things, because they give you a freedom to say certain things when you get an ad copy, right? But there's certain things I can't say. Or do I watch certain things now more than ever? Yeah, I do. Then that's just me being honest. I got to get paid,
Yep.
and people might call that selling out, but
You don't want to cut off the hand that feeds you.
I mean, is
That's
it
the reality.
selling out or is it capitalism?
I don't like the term selling out for the record.
capitalism.
Yeah, I think it's a BS term, to be honest. When people say, "Oh, that actor or that comedian or whoever," so I'm like, wait, so a company approached them
Yeah.
and they got paid this sum of money, so that's selling out? I would argue they worked their whole life to achieve that success.
Right.
Oh, it comes back to like then you could go to like, is it selling out to go work for somebody just because you don't like your job? Right?
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean? Like, it doesn't make any sense.
No, 100%. That's what I always say.
Yeah, it doesn't make any sense.
You could say, I'm a sellout. I don't like waiting tables, but I wait tables to make a living.
Right.
Then you're a sellout. What? That doesn't make any sense.
Right.
And a lot of people say stuff that they don't even really
Yeah.
mean, or like you don't know how you're going to react in the moment if something like that actually happened to you.
So like we've had people say you guys have tamed your show a lot. Not a lot. We've had people at times occasionally leave a call and say,
You've gotten a little bit PC.
It's
the reality.
It's got, and it's not. It's more of. But I also see. My thing is, you better bring receipts.
Yeah.
So when people say, "Oh, you guys have toned it down," and for the record, not that I'm trying to tone anything down. First of all, you evolve as a human.
Yep.
Me at 25 is different than me at 30 versus 35 versus 40. I'm a completely different
People
person.
don't get that though sometimes.
People don't get that.
They're expecting the young Andy from when you started 7 years ago.
Yeah, the 7 year ago Andy who's binge drinking and just going out with girls. Like, that's just not me anymore.
Yeah.
But when they say, "Oh, it's not as dirty," I always will be like, "Okay, name a sports show that's having this, and this discussion." Oh, you can't. That's right, because we're still the same people we are.
Yeah. I love what you highlighted there. Basically, give me examples is what you're saying, and people can't say anything, so it's like you're full of shit.
Well, they are, especially in this world of heightened everything being political and sociopolitical.
Everyone wants to complain about something.
So I've had some people complain to me about they feel maybe some of my and I shouldn't say some people, just a couple, maybe get a couple tweets here and there. "Oh, your politics since you moved back to the Midwest." And I'm like, just like I just did there. Give 5 huge issues where I have changed my stance. And I'll tweet that at them. "Oh, you haven't responded? Cool, because you can't." I'm one of those people. If you come at me, I can handle it, but I need evidence.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, yeah, you're like, if you've got evidence, I'm okay with that.
Sure.
Otherwise, don't come. Yeah, but some people just like to poke, right?
And you know what's weird is, to go back to the changing thing and evolving thing. This is one of the things I find so weird about people. They want to hold you to how you were instead of celebrating you evolving, especially like emotionally.
Yeah.
Do you know what I'm saying?
No, 1,000%.
I don't get it. People will be like, "Oh, you're lame now. You're this." I'm like, what? Like, because I've matured?
Right. Oh, because I've grown up.
Well, look at all the people that try to dig up dirt on people from X number of years ago on Twitter. It's like, why would you even spend time doing that?
I never get that.
Yeah. Everyone has dirt on
everyone.
Them. It's ridiculous. Like, I mean, why would you ever want to get into politics or become like the president? Like, someone's going to try to dig up stuff on you when you were in like second grade. It's like, yeah, I was maybe mean to someone. Do I feel bad about it? Yeah, I do. But like, we're human beings. We're going to make mistakes.
Yeah.
I'm sorry I kicked Johnny in the face in second grade on the playground. Like,
yeah.
I can't believe you did that, by the way, Cole.
Dude, I probably did. I don't know. Sorry, Johnny, if you're out there.
I got one last topic for us to dive into because I don't want to keep you too much longer. I really appreciate you joining us tonight.
He looks relaxed. Look at
well, he
got the foot up now, man.
I think you were born him a little bit with the schooling of VC a little bit. I mean, he enjoyed it, but you were going in depth. You were teaching me, but I was getting a little bored too.
I will say, I zoned out for a minute.
I could read it. You were super passionate about it.
Yeah, don't ask the question if you don't want the answer.
No, I know. Hey. To be fair,
how did I even get on that wormhole though?
I asked it. It's my fault.
He's really good. He's good at asking us questions.
I got
too.
I
he
humble
does this
brag.
for a living.
I just came from a swim. I haven't eaten, so maybe I zoned out a little. Because
he's also really hungry. He's about to get hangry, so let's not keep him too much longer.
Yeah.
Do you coach baseball?
No.
Basketball. Though.
Basketball. Where at?
He might not want to state that.
No, that's fine. 3rd and 4th grade, Immaculate Heart of Mary. It's really intense.
Is it?
No.
So
dude, I'm sure it's intense.
He's a traitor. You're not coaching the good old Guardian Angels.
No,
dude, you're coaching them.
I coached my nephew. I coached my nephew the last 2 years, and he goes to IHM.
That's super fun.
It is fun. Great age, 3rd and 4th graders. But now I realize that this year, there's kids who don't want to play, and then my opinion is this: by 4th grade, find something that your child is interested in and push them towards that.
Yeah.
If they don't want to play basketball, cool. If they want to do piano or the trumpet or whatever, what I'm saying, push them towards that. That's what I found interesting. That was the difference between 3rd and 4th grade, was that now it also creates this division in the team because the other kids know so-and-so doesn't want to be here.
Right.
And then they get annoyed.
Right.
And then
it becomes a whole thing.
And then I have those conversations with my nephew, for example, and he's like, "Well, he doesn't even want to be here." I'm like, "I don't know what to tell you, man. That's their parents."
Right. Do you, not to go down this rabbit hole, but to kind of go down it, do you think that parents should always just let their kids kind of flow towards whatever, they're engaged with? Or do you think there needs to be some structure where it's like, no, you got to go out and try this. I know you might not like it, but maybe you'll change.
I'm for structure for sure, but I think definitely pushing them towards their interest.
Yeah.
I think letting them, like I said, by the time fourth grade, maybe still not there yet. By the time fifth, sixth grade, it's just my take.
Yeah.
Let them go towards something they gravitate. Right?
Makes sense. Yeah.
Doesn't matter what that is.
Yeah.
Well, let them participate. I mean, I can, Ava's a second grade. My daughter's a second grade.
Okay.
So I coach her soccer team. I've coached it since she was 4 years old. Talk about a nightmare about 4-year-olds running around.
Oh, I can only imagine.
Oh my God. I mean, my stress level when I coached these 4-year-olds was like, that was like the worst day of the week. Like I loved it, but it was like, I got to wrangle these girls and try to teach them how to play soccer.
Structure's not easy.
It wasn't but I think for her, my take on that is, again, I kind of would agree with what you said on structure, meaning like give them stuff to try out, right?
Sure.
Like for her, like let's try this, let's do this, like because otherwise they're not going to know what they do or don't like if you don't get them involved in something. And then with her, what she starts gravitating towards, like horseback riding. She loves horses, so we don't shove it down her throat, but you want to do one lesson, now you want to do 2 lessons a week, like let's do more and more like that. Let's start doing shows. The more she's interested in that, eventually, it might weed something else at that she doesn't have that much interest in. But I don't think we would have ever known she was passionate about it if we didn't ever get her involved in it in the first place.
And I think about that with myself. My dad was always so supportive when I was a kid. To bring it back to me wanting to be on SportsCenter, he'd say, why don't you write to the anchors? Or there was multiple players, whether it was Reds or Xavier basketball, I'd literally write letters to it. My dad would push that and support that. And I look at that and I think that effect was so profound on me and directly why I ended up hosting a sports podcast.
That's so cool.
And also teaching failure.
Uh-huh.
I just think my problem, not to sound like an old head, but I feel like these kids don't understand you're going to take a lot of L's in life.
We talk about that all the time.
Literally.
And that's how you learn. And whether that's an L in a job, a relationship, sports, it doesn't matter. Everything I've grown from has been the toughest moments, or when you lose, grief, whatever it is.
Yep.
It's when you change.
100%.
Yep. Well said, guys. Well said. So one last topic here that I want to dive into, comedy, which is a very large term there. Like, do you see comedy getting better or worse? And I know that's probably a loaded question. Like, I feel like comedians are now being silenced or have to be careful about what they talk about. And maybe you don't feel that way. Like, I'm seeing some of the recent stuff come out with, like, I'm blanking on his name, Chappelle. I think he got a lot of backlash over the past couple of years. And even last night, someone charged him, which is wild. Like,
it is wild.
Everyone seems to get upset about something. Like, I feel like comedy is just about making fun of whatever it is. And there's always going to be someone that feels upset about it.
Yeah, well, I think at the end of the day, comedians, and I'm biased because it's my background, but I think comedians are, in a way, the mouthpiece of culture across the world. Yeah. And that's how I would argue comedians are so important, because they are the people who can poke fun, like you're saying, at anything. So for me, nothing's off limits. Nothing.
Okay.
And I think that's very important. And through comedy, I think a lot of things are highlighted, bad things, through comedy or through tragedy. I know in my own life, sometimes some of the most difficult moments I want to write jokes about, because that's
how you cope.
That's an emotional way of dealing with it. Exactly.
Yeah.
It is scary when you see Dave Chappelle attacked or people freaking out. And I don't ultimately worry, because I'm still a firm believer in capitalism and the market will dictate.
Yeah.
So he's never been more power. I don't know if I'm going to use the word powerful. I should say he's never been as big as he is now.
Sure.
Like, he's always been big, but I'm saying none of that has decreased.
Yeah.
So if people are still paying to see him, you can complain and you can say, oh, it's offensive. And I think that's the problem now, is people don't understand how to take jokes.
No, not at all.
Well, they just forget what comedy is. I think it's like,
and they want to be part of the show. So if you show up to a comedy show, this is a professional. You might not agree with them, then just don't laugh.
Right.
But the minute you make yourself part of the show, you're going to get destroyed.
You're going to get
Because
annihilated.
they have a microphone, and this is what they do for a living. So I always find that funny when somebody heckles or somebody wants to make themselves a part of the show.
You're like you just made your own grave.
It's stepping into a boxing arena and like
it is.
Yeah.
It's like me going onto the ropes and saying I'm going to fight Mike Tyson. It's
You're gonna
not
get destroyed.
just like that guy did on the airplane.
Yeah.
It's not going to end well. Like Chappelle said in one of his specials, Twitter is not real life. You can have your feelings hurt. That's not real life.
Right.
So he's always been my favorite all time.
Yeah.
So for me, I've loved him since his first special, Killing Them Softly, which came out in 2000.
Okay. I
So-
don't think I've seen that one.
So it was his first HBO special. It came out in 2000. I've been diehard for, 22 years now? So I always say to people, I've followed his career since then. He's been my favorite comedian. Nothing about Dave has changed.
Sure.
The problem is everyone around him has gotten too sensitive, and they've changed.
And I think the loudest critic is usually like the smallest, representative of
100%.
Yeah. You know what I'm saying?
Like if you go on social media, it's the extremes from both sides
Yep.
that are the loudest.
Yep.
And that's amplified by how the tweets go and these echo chambers. And my advice to everyone is that stuff, like, I hate that I have to use that stuff because I just think it's terrible.
I would agree. And Cole and I have talked about this off the air.
It's literally so true. It's like
It's toxic.
yeah, it's like how you engage, but it's also just like some of it's just gone so far the wrong way. Like it's being used in such a negative way. It's like
That's the key point, though. How you use
Yeah.
it. It should be used as a tool, but it's very easy to get caught up in some
Cancel
garbage
culture.
crap. You're going through 1,000, tweet or subtweet or Reddit, and it's like,
and
what
the
am I
irony for me is
reading?
everyone, like, I always say, people on the left get canceled, they get hit. But people on the right also just want to cancel people as much because it's the counteract to the left cancel culture. So everybody wants to cancel everyone, and
it becomes this big thing, this revolving door.
yeah, how about everybody read a goddamn book?
Yeah.
How about that? Open a book and read it.
I've tweeted this. Do you think the world would be better without Twitter?
I've debated this many times.
Yeah.
So that's a good question. That's actually a great question. I've actually had this discussion on my podcast. Same thing. There have been good things to unite people, good causes.
Sure. Yeah.
Ultimately, I would argue the mental health, the negative aspects, I'd say at the end of the day,
Outweigh the good that's out there.
I would say that. And you're talking about a guy whose basically career is built on
Right.
social media.
Yeah.
But I can be honest about it.
There's a lot of negativity out there from not even Twitter, but just social media in general.
Instagram, Snapchat, and the studies don't lie.
There's science that tells you that it's terrible for your mental
Well,
health.
it's just kind of like, I mean, if you think about it, I think we've talked about this too. You think about social media, right? You ever been in a room full of people and you got like the negative person, you got the too positive, you got the too negative, you got the too quiet, you got the too opinionated, right? You've got these people in a room, right? Well, you just literally like have a room with whoever wants to be on it in the world that can say whatever they want anonymously or unanonymously to each other. Like that's why it's a negative thing, because you've got
there's no consequences for what
there's
you
no
shoot off more times.
And they would
than
never
not.
say that to your face.
Exactly.
right, they could just say whatever they want on there. Like
Or let's say you're on YouTube and you think the earth is flat.
Yeah.
And you watch a video on that. What does YouTube's algorithm do? Keep sending you more videos about the earth being flat. Next thing you know, you're believing this more and more because you're seeing more videos. See where this goes? You're just living in a constant echo chamber. Next thing you know, you're doing a protest about... By the way, these exist. For anyone listening,
you're right.
I saw one going on in Venice Beach, California, a rally for the earth is flat.
I kind of want to go to one of those.
Oh, I am fascinated by
I
this
really
stuff.
want to go.
I am fascinated. But that's my point, is that you live in this echo chamber and nobody just talks to people. No, nobody would say mean things to someone's face. So for the longest time, we had a problem on our show with people not using their real face on Twitter.
I find those people ridiculous, to be honest. It's like,
like
you're hiding behind.
I know.
Yeah.
And even if they're not talking trash, oh, you want to have a real conversation with me about Tom Brady's status as the greatest quarterback of all time. Cool, dude. I don't feel like arguing with Kermit the Frog. I just don't.
Right.
I want to know what you look like. Because my curiosity, are you a 16-year-old kid? Are you a 45-year-old man? Are you a Patriots fan? Who are you?
And is that so you know how hard you can go in?
100%. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, yeah.
Especially being in the sports world. It's like if I post something that might take a dig at Jordan or Kobe. Oh, wait, your avatar is Kobe Bryant? This is a dumb conversation.
Right.
Right, like we already know what your opinion is.
Yeah.
Like if it's a 10-year-old kid just shooting off crap, there's going to be certain things that you're going to stay away
Sure.
from probably responding with. I get it. Yeah.
100%.
Yeah.
But I definitely think overall, social media has done more harm than good.
I think the average attention span's like gotten worse too. I think that's a fact now. Like it was only like 5 seconds and now it's like half of that. I don't know. I could be wrong. Fact check me on that.
I tell people I've actually been sleeping better since I started 0 screens before bed.
Hell yeah.
I'll just read.
Yep.
Like, you should do it probably at least an hour, but start maybe 15, 20 minutes.
To wind down. Yeah.
You'll sleep so much better if you have a book.
Do you bring your phone or any technology into your bedroom? Because I tried not to do that.
It's smarter to do what you're saying,
But it's hard.
My alarm wakes me up.
Oh, sure. Yeah. The other thing that we've talked about recently is lighting at night as well can play a role in how quickly you can fall asleep. Like there's junk lighting, like the bright fluorescent lights. Like your brain doesn't know if it's truly nighttime or not, and it makes it harder to fall asleep.
You know what also helps you fall asleep really well?
Beer,
2 kids,
weed.
You fall asleep like a baby after.
I bet.
After you've been up.
Right. No, there's plenty of solutions to the
Kids
problem.
really are the best remedy for sleep.
Yeah, they're the best and worst. I mean, they wear you out.
Yeah.
But I mean,
So you've talked about growing like in your career and you're not the same person that you were 7 years ago or X number of years ago. Like what advice would you give to your future self? And then what advice would you give looking back to your younger self?
Wow.
Yeah, we're getting real here.
Future self is tough.
Okay.
I'd say my future self I struggle relaxing. To just relax, take a deep breath, not be so damn tense.
Yeah.
And I that's my current self as well.
Do you think that's because you're worried about self-driving cars?
I think
dude,
that's
it's
it.
a machine.
I think that's it.
Yeah.
I'm telling you, AI is taking over. You're talking about my previous self?
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
that's tough. I think we just learn through experiences, but
Sure.
I hate to dwell. I think we all do it, right? You don't want to dwell on things you did wrong.
Yeah.
But my younger self, maybe certain things I should have gone harder at. Or tried more things.
Like what? Do you have anything that comes to mind?
Like stand up, maybe. I didn't go as hard as I could have.
Okay. I was expecting you
Like
to
you felt
say
like you
point guard playing in the NBA.
You felt like you didn't give it like your 110% effort.
No, I never did. But I also was always trying to find ways where I could make money in that sphere, whether it was
Yeah.
podcasting, radio.
Right, so shoulda, coulda, woulda.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things that I don't really. Maybe some dumb financial decisions.
Sure.
That's actually more of something I would suggest. But overall, I'm happy with just the life I've, the path I've traveled. so
Yeah,
to
no
speak.
regrets, man. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. You don't know.
No regrets.
Yeah.
He's got that tattooed on him. You-
No regrets.
Do you?
Yeah, I'll show you later.
No, you don't.
Yeah, I do.
No, you don't.
Yeah, right here.
Bullshit.
I'm dead serious. I
No,
got it.
you
I got it
don't.
when I was drunk, like 4.5 years
Dude,
ago.
are you like a white sorority girl?
Dude,
you did not get that
I'm not
tattoo.
kidding you.
You guys will have to share these secrets off air.
Yeah,
You did not get no
Not
regrets.
kidding you. It's
do you spell it with an
and I haven't. got-
RAGRETS?
Yeah, I literally got it, and I I haven't gotten it LASIK'd off because I like lasered off because I want to remember like how much of an idiot I was then.
How old?
24.
Take me through your head.
Dude, I'm just messing with you.
I'm like, you're taking this bit too far.
I know you are. I know you are.
Jeez.
You should have kept going with it.
I could have kept going, but
I bet no way. Do either of you have tattoos?
no.
I didn't think so.
I've thought about getting one, but again, it goes back to
What would you get?
what would I get?
Yeah.
I don't
No
know
regrets.
exactly what I would. I want an arm sleeve
Like
would be
on his-
sweet.
on his
but the
neck.
thing is, I don't want the tattoo forever, and that tattoos are there to be permanent.
Exactly.
That's the thing.
That's
if
my
I could
take.
get a tattoo for 5 to 10 years while I'm still relatively young, yeah, that'd be cool.
That's
but
my
when I've
take.
got kids, wife, when I'm 40, 50 years old, I probably don't want to.
Dude, they got these things called henna tattoos.
Yeah, but those are like
It lasts
60 days, 90 days.
That's what I'm going to do after the show.
Try it out.
I'm going to get a no regrets henna tattoo.
There we go.
Try it out. See if it sticks. 'Cause
You
might
should
be
get
like,
some
dude,
knuckle tats.
Yeah.
It's like taking a tattoo for a test drive. Like you can see
Yeah.
if you like it. See how
True.
people react to it.
I'm going to get a knuckle tattoo. This is going to say yo, and this one's going to say fool. Yo, fool.
I like that a lot. Well, hey, I say we wrap things up. This has been a fun conversation. This might have been our longest conversation that we've had. I mean, we could probably keep going, but we're going to wrap things up. Want to say thank you once again to Andy Ruther for joining us. Where can people find you at?
Just everywhere at Andy Ruther.
Okay. All right.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Dude, Andy, thanks for coming on.
Appreciate it.
I can't wait to see your no regrets tattoo.
Yeah, we'll have
too.
to have you come back on and
stoked
see how
about
things
that.
are going with the tattoos.
Love
Dude,
it.
you really, I couldn't, once I was too deep into that.
No, I was pretty sure you were joking.
Yeah.
But I had to keep.
He wanted to see what you had to offer.
I mean, I could have definitely gone through a whole story, but I was like, I'm just going
Well,
to.
that's what that's basically a bit we were doing. You
Yeah.
just keep going back and forth.
Yeah.
Get into acting.
Dude, I'm telling you.
We say this on every show. We suck at signing
All right,
off, but
all right.
we are signing off officially.
Dude, he shuts me down.
I'm hungry. Go ahead. Say what you wanted to say.
Thank you guys for joining us. Thank you, Andy. We appreciate you, and tune in for more content to come.
We got some merch dropping sometime soon as well.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, guys.
No regrets.
No regrets.